Hello and welcome to the Breakdown, where I, Alana Torres, will talk about, some crazy stories that I find on the internet, perhaps with ChatGPT or, the help of some of you. So let me know which stories you like below that I've talked about. Let me know what you might want to hear, and we'll just get into it. Thanks for stopping by. So first up, we have the survival story of Julianne Kopke. Okay, here we go. Close your eyes and imagine this. You're flying thousands of feet above the Amazon rainforest, strapped into an airplane seat. It's Christmas Eve, 1971. The flight should take just an hour, but in a matter of minutes, your entire world will fall apart. Julianne was only 17 years old when she boarded LANSA Flight 508 with her mother, Maria. The flight was headed from Lima, Peru, to the small city of Pucallpa. The airline already had a poor safety reputation. Her father had actually urged them not to fly with LANSA, but Julianne's mother insisted. It was the only ticket they could get before Christmas, and Maria wanted to be with her husband, Hans Wilhelm Kopke, a German zoologist working at a research station deep in the rainforest. The plane was nearly full, carrying 92 passengers. As it approached the Amazon basin, dark thunderclouds gathered on the horizon. Witnesses later said it looked like the flight was swallowed by the storm. Passengers felt turbulence shake the aircraft violently. Overhead bins popped open. Lightning illuminated the cabin. Then, a deafening explosion. The plane had been struck by lightning and literally torn apart in midair. Julianne, still buckled into her row of 3 seats, was sucked out of the fuselage. She plummeted more than 10,000 feet, nearly 2 miles, into the dense jungle below. Scientists believe the thick tree canopy slowed her fall, cushioning the impact just enough to spare her life. When Julianne came to, she was alone. Her collarbone was broken, her arm deeply gashed, and her right eye swollen shut. She had lost 1 shoe and her glasses. Around her, the wreckage of Flight 508 was scattered across the rainforest, but no other survivors were nearby. For hours, she called out for her mother, but only silence answered. Despite the shock, Julianne had one advantage. She had grown up in the rainforest. Both her parents were researchers who had taught her basic survival skills. She remembered her father's instructions. If you ever get lost, follow water. Water will lead you to people. Julianne found a small creek and began walking downstream. For food, she had almost nothing. Just a few pieces of candy she discovered in the wreckage. She drank water straight from the stream. At night, she huddled under leaves, listening to the deafening roar of insects and animals in the jungle. On the 4th day, she stumbled across several crash victims, still strapped to their seats, headfirst in the ground. Among them was a woman she thought might be her mother, but she couldn't bear to look too closely. With no way to help, she pressed on. As the days dragged on, her injuries worsened. A deep cut on her arm became infected, and maggots began to burrow inside the wound. Still, she kept walking. On the 9th day, she spotted a small boat moored along the riverbank. Inside was a can of gasoline. Using her father's advice, once again, she poured the fuel over her wound, forcing the maggots out. Too weak to continue, she stayed near the boat until finally local loggers arrived. At first, they were startled. A filthy, injured teenage girl alone in the jungle seemed like a ghost. But when Julianne explained who she was, they carried her to safety to their village. Soon after, she was airlifted to a hospital. Out of 92 people on LANSA Flight 508, Julianne was the only survivor. Her mother had perished in the crash. Julianne went on to study biology like her parents and eventually became a mammologist. She later shared her story in the memoir When I Fell from the Sky, proving that her ordeal was not only an incredible survival story, but also a testament to human resilience and to the knowledge her parents instilled in her that saved her life. All right, next up, we have the Dyatlov Pass Incident. This is an unsolved mystery. 9 experienced hikers head into the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia in 1959. Days later, rescuers find their tent slashed open from the inside and their bodies scattered across the snow. What happened in those mountains remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the 20th century. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. Alongside him were 8 fellow students and recent graduates, all skilled in winter trekking. Their destination? Ural Mountain, a remote peak in the Urals. On January 27th, they began their hike, documenting their progress with photos and journals that still survive today. When they failed to return, a search party was launched. What they found shocked investigators. The hiker's tent was discovered half buried in the snow. It hadn't been blown over or collapsed. It had been cut open from the inside, as if the hikers had fled in panic. Their boots, coats, and supplies were inside and untouched. The first bodies were discovered about a mile away, near the edge of the forest. 2 men were found in their underwear, barefoot, lying near the remains of a small fire. Nearby lay 3 more bodies, frozen in poses suggesting they were trying to crawl back toward the tent. But it was the final 4 bodies, discovered months later, that deepened the mystery. They were found in a ravine under several feet of snow. Some had severe injuries, fractured skulls, broken ribs, internal bleeding, yet, strangely, there were no external wounds, as if the force had come from within. One woman was missing her tongue. Others showed traces of radiation on their clothing. Theories exploded. Some suggested an avalanche forced the hikers to flee, though the terrain didn't fully support it. Others speculated about secret Soviet weapons testing, infrasound-induced panic, even UFOs. Locals whispered about a curse from the mountain's name. The official Soviet report was super vague, concluding only that the hikers died from a compelling natural force. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case and leaned heavily on the avalanche theory, but many experts remain unconvinced. Over 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident endures as one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in modern history. The hikers left behind photographs of smiling faces and a tent full of supplies, but their final moments are forever locked in the frozen silence of the Urals. And now we have our third story. Bizarre coincidence. Violet Jessop, Miss Unsinkable. Okay. Some people are unlucky. Violet Jessop was impossibly lucky. Over the course of her career as a stewardess and nurse, she survived 3 of the worst ship disasters of the 20th century, earning her the nickname Miss Unsinkable. Violet was born in Argentina in 1887 to Irish immigrant parents. As a child, she nearly died of tuberculosis but made a full recovery. That resilience carried into her adult life when she took work as a stewardess on ocean liners. Her first brush with disaster came in 1911 aboard the RMS Olympic, Titanic's older sister ship. The Olympic collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. The damage was severe, but miraculously, the Olympic stayed afloat. Violet walked away unharmed. Less than a year later, she boarded the Titanic as a stewardess. On the night of April 14th, 1912, she was serving passengers when the ship struck an iceberg. In her memoir, she recalled an eerie calm as the liner tilted into the freezing Atlantic. Violet was ordered into Lifeboat 16 to help care for passengers. She later remembered being handed a baby to hold as the boat was lowered away. Hours later, she was rescued by the RMS Carpathia. If surviving Titanic wasn't enough, fate came for her again during World War I. Violet volunteered as a nurse with the British Red Cross and was assigned to the HMHS Britannic, Titanic's other sister ship. In 1916, the Britannic struck a German mine in the Aegean Sea and began to sink. This time, Violet was thrown into the water and nearly sucked into the ship's propellers. She escaped with a skull fracture, but once again, she survived. 3 disasters, 3 escapes. Violet went on to live until 1971, working at sea until retirement. She later joked that she always expected the sea to claim her, but it never did. Instead, she became a living legend of survival. Her story is a reminder that history sometimes writes characters so improbable you'd think that they were fiction. Violet Jessop didn't just survive shipwrecks, she outlived them, earning her rightful place as Miss Unsinkable. Number 4, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum Heist. At 1:24 a.m. on March 18, 1990, 2 men dressed as police officers walked into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. By sunrise, they had pulled off the greatest art theft in modern history, and more than 30 years later, the case remains unsolved. The museum was founded by Isabella Stewart Gardner, a wealthy art collector who built a Venetian-style palace to house her treasures. She died in 1924, leaving behind strict instructions. The collection must never be changed, and the empty spaces left by missing pieces must always remain. And that's interesting that she stipulated that. Like, did she mean, like, if somebody bought anything in the collection, why would anything be missing? Why would she anticipate that? Anyway, that fateful night, 2 men rang the museum's side door, claiming to respond to a disturbance. The security guards, against protocol, let them in. Within minutes, the officers revealed themselves as thieves, handcuffing the guards and duct taping them in the basement. For the next 81 minutes, the thieves roamed freely through the galleries. They stole 13 pieces of art, including The Concert by Vermeer, one of only 34 of his paintings in existence, and Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, his only seascape. Degas sketches and a Chinese bronze finial were also taken. Inexplicably, the thieves ignored dozens of more valuable works, suggesting they may have been stealing on commission. By the time the sun rose, the thieves had vanished. The stolen art is valued at over $500 million, making it the biggest unsolved art theft ever. Despite massive FBI investigations, international manhunts, and suspected ties to organized crime, the artworks have never been recovered. In the museum today, the empty frames still hang on the walls, exactly as Isabella's will required. Silent reminders of what was stolen. The Gardner heist isn't just about missing art. It's about the allure of mystery itself. Who stole the paintings? Where are they now? And will they ever reappear? Until those questions are answered, the case remains a masterpiece of crime. And now we have something within the realm of science and human ingenuity. We're talking about Apollo 13 here. In April 1970, 3 astronauts launched toward the moon aboard Apollo 13. Just 2 days later, their spacecraft exploded in deep space. What follows wasn't a moon landing, but one of the most remarkable rescues in history. The crew consisted of Commander Jim Lovell, Command Module Pilot Jack Swigert, and Lunar Module Pilot Fred Hayes. Their mission was routine. Apollo 13 would be the 3rd crewed moon landing. But on April 13th, about 200,000 miles from Earth, an oxygen tank in the service module exploded. Swigert's words, "Houston, we've had a problem here," became instantly famous. The explosion crippled the spacecraft, power dwindled, oxygen levels fell. The crew had to abandon their carefully planned mission and fight for survival. They shut down the command module to conserve energy and retreated into the lunar module, which became their lifeboat. On the ground, NASA engineers scrambled. They improvised solutions with whatever materials the astronauts had aboard. Famously, they rigged a square carbon dioxide filter to fit into a round hole, using plastic bags, duct tape, and suit parts. Meanwhile, the crew endured freezing temperatures, condensation dripping from the walls, and rations of only a few hundred calories a day. They navigated manually to adjust their course, even using Earth's horizon as a guide. On April 17th, 4 tense days after the explosion, Apollo 13 re-entered Earth's atmosphere. Millions watched on live television as their capsule splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. Though the mission was classified as a successful failure, it never reached the moon. Apollo 13 proved the power of human ingenuity, teamwork, and calm under unimaginable pressure. In the words of Gene Kranz, NASA's flight director, "Failure is not an option." And thanks to that mindset, these astronauts lived to tell the tale. Okay, and for our last story for this round, we're going to get into a cultural oddity that we will refer to as the Great Emu War. In 1932, Australia faced an unlikely enemy, the emu. And in one of history's strangest military campaigns, the birds actually won. After World War I, Australian veterans were given farmland in Western Australia, but they struggled with a new problem: emus. These large, flightless birds migrated inland in massive flocks, devastating crops. Farmers pleaded for government help. The solution? Send in the army. In November 1932, Major G.P.W. Meredith led a squad of soldiers armed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Their mission? Reduce the emu population. But the birds proved to be surprisingly difficult targets. Fast, scattered, and resilient, they darted through the outback in small groups. The soldiers' first engagement fired hundreds of rounds into a flock of 50 birds and killed only a handful. A second ambush jammed the machine guns. Within weeks, the campaign turned absurd. Reports noted that the emus were highly organized, with lookout birds seeming to warn the flocks. One soldier compared them to Zulu warriors. Despite firing thousands of rounds, the army barely dented the emu population. Embarrassed, the government called off the operation in December. Newspapers mocked the fiasco, dubbing it the Great Emu War. Farmers were left to fend for themselves, and emus remained a persistent problem. Today, the story is remembered as a comedy of errors, a reminder that human arrogance can be humbled by nature. Australia's soldiers returned from war with medals on their chests, but against the emus, they left with nothing but defeat. All right, well, that's my first go talking about some really interesting stories that I found on the internet. With the help of ChatGPT, I will be honest about that. But anyway, at least I'm lending my own voice to this. Just let me know what you think were the most interesting stories. What kind of stories you might want to hear later. Let me know any comments you have about any of these. I would love to talk about any of this with you guys in the comments. And yeah, let's keep this going. I want to do this at least once a week. So thanks for sticking around. And I hope you are having a great weekend yourself. And take care, and I'll see you soon.